Imagine breaking a 30-year curse and still being told that wasn't good enough. That's exactly what just happened in Cleveland. In a league built on numbers and stats, sometimes it's the unspoken moments that change everything. The look on Andrew Berry's face after that win said it all. The emotion, the pride, the relief. He walked up to the rookie quarterback nobody believed in a fifth-round pick, written off as just Deion's kid, and asked one simple question, "How's it feel, bro?" And what happened next? That single moment? It didn't just go viral, it hit a nerve. Because behind that exchange was a story of risk, rejection, internal politics, and a franchise that's been searching for hope since the 90 seconds. And when that hope finally arrived, they chose not to give it a game ball. The NFL world is buzzing. Fans are furious. And the coaching staff may have just made a disastrous mistake right after one of the biggest wins in Cleveland Browns history. But to really understand why that moment mattered so much, you have to start with the guy who took the heat for drafting Shadour Sanders in the first place. When the Cleveland Browns selected Shadour Sanders in the 5th round of the NFL draft, it wasn't just a pick, it was a headline waiting to explode. Fans immediately raised eyebrows. Analysts on major networks rolled their eyes. And social media? Torn apart. Dusun, system quarterback. Only got drafted because of his dad. That's what they said. And the man who took the most heat for the decision? General Manager Andrew Berry. To understand what just happened, you have to remember what Berry was up against. It wasn't just media noise, it was pressure from every direction. Pressure from fans who were tired of watching the Browns fail year after year. Pressure from inside the organization to choose a safer quarterback who fit the mold. Pressure from scouts whispering that Shedeur wasn't NFL ready, that he wasn't mature enough, that he was too connected to the spotlight, not hungry for the grind. And yes, pressure because his last name was Sanders. There was this unspoken idea floating around NFL circles that Shedeur would never live up to the hype, that he was a product of Deion's spotlight, that his stats were inflated, his tape overhyped, and that as soon as he faced NFL-level defenses, the story would end right there. Berry didn't buy into the noise. In draft meetings, Berry reportedly pushed hard for Shedeur. Sources claim others inside the building weren't nearly as enthusiastic, but Berry held his ground. He believed in what he saw, not just the arm strength or the pocket presence, but the mindset. The film showed a quarterback who didn't rattle, even when his O-line collapsed, a leader who never blamed teammates, never shifted focus. Just a calm, calculated player who carried himself like a veteran long before getting paid. And Berry saw one more thing that most people missed: mental toughness. You can't teach poise. You can't coach perception under pressure. And in Shadour's case, you also couldn't ignore the shadows he walked into. The son of one of the most famous, flashy, unstoppable athletes in sports history wasn't supposed to be grounded, but he was. He wasn't supposed to put in the grit and long nights behind closed doors, but he did. And when you watched him speak in college press conferences, there was zero arrogance. Just calm. Just presence. Still, the 5th round stamp stuck to him like a scarlet letter. Drafting him that late didn't silence critics. It gave them more fuel. If he's so good, why didn't Berry take him earlier? They said. If he believes in him, why wait this long? But that's the thing about smart GMs. They know how to play the board. Berry waited. He knew Shedeur would slide, not because of a lack of talent, but because of disrespect, because of assumptions, because pride still clouds judgment across 32 front offices. And when the moment came, Berry struck. Shadour Sanders was now a Brown, but the real gamble hadn't started. The real test would come months later amid a 17-game losing streak, with Cleveland's quarterbacks dropping like flies and the season slipping away. Who would Berry back then? That's when he made the call that forced people to either trust or doubt him for good. Start the rookie. Give him real reps. Let him run with the starters, not next season, not in preseason, right now. And when Shedeur stepped onto that field for his first game, everything was on the line: Berry's credibility, the franchise's future, and Shadour's career. 17 failed rookie QBs before him. 30 years of heartbreak. And somehow, against every odd, he delivered. Suddenly, the draft pick that made headlines turned into a masterstroke. The questionable choice became a franchise-changing decision. This wasn't just about a quarterback getting his shot. It was about a general manager putting his reputation on the line and winning. But Berry's victory wasn't clean, because while the world praised his choice, something happened after the game that left fans stunned, angry, and asking, Why does it still feel like Shadour's being held back? You could feel it from the opening snap. This wasn't just another throwaway game in another forgettable Browns season. It felt different. The kind of different that makes the stadium breathe a little heavier. The kind of different that makes every snap feel like something's about to happen. And then it did. In his very first NFL start, Shadour Sanders didn't just survive out there, he made history. Let's be crystal clear here. The Browns had not won a game with a rookie quarterback in over 30 years. 17 Browns rookies had tried and failed before him. And the franchise was riding a brutal 17-game losing streak heading into this moment. That's not pressure, that's generational weight. But you wouldn't know it by looking at him. No nerves in his eyes, no panic in his cadence, just pure focus. He threw for over 200 yards, held the pocket like a seasoned vet, made the right reads, and carried himself like he'd been here 10 years. It wasn't a perfect game statistically, but it didn't need to be, because what Shedeur delivered was something Cleveland hasn't seen in decades at the quarterback position: composure. You couldn't script this moment better because it wasn't scripted. It was real, raw, hard-earned. And what happened right after the final whistle took the internet by storm. Andrew Berry, the same GM who'd been dragged through the mud for picking this kid, walked straight onto the field with one thing on his face: pure emotion. He didn't hit him with the usual GM handshake or press-friendly fist bump. He looked him right in the eyes and said, "How's it feel, bro?" No filters, no posturing, just a man who bet everything on this quarterback, finally seeing that gamble pay off. And Shadour? He didn't boast. He didn't brag. He just said, "Man, we have a lot to work on, but we made some tackles today. I took some hits, but gave out a few too." In that moment, he gave you the most pro-quarterback answer anyone could hope for. Humble, hungry, honest. He didn't deflect. He didn't act like one win was the end-all. He acknowledged the accomplishment while pointing ahead, focusing on improvement that's rare for any player, let alone a rookie in the most intense position in sports. And Barry's face? You could see what this meant to him. He wasn't just proud, he looked validated. Not because it proved he was right about evaluating talent, but because he'd seen the rest of the world pick apart a young player he knew could thrive if just given the chance. In 30 seconds, that moment between them became a symbol not just of vindication, but of what's possible when somebody refuses to listen to the outside noise. It went viral for a reason. In a world of stiff post-game interviews and robotic, pre-rehearsed answers, this was something the world wasn't used to seeing from the NFL: authentic emotion. Millions watched on TikTok, Instagram, and X. Fans who didn't even care about the Browns were commenting, "This is what we live for." It was a rare glimpse of a front office leader and his quarterback connecting, and it hit people hard. Because after decades of losing, quarterback drama, draft busts, and disappointment, people were ready to believe again. This game wasn't just about stats. It wasn't just about ending a losing streak. This was about hope. And for a team as emotionally battered as the Cleveland Browns, hope is everything. But just when it looked like Shedeur was finally getting the recognition he deserved, something happened in that locker room that left fans stunned. He made history. He won the game. He broke a 30-year curse. And yet, he didn't get the game ball. After everything Shadour Sanders had just accomplished, the 30-year curse broken, 200-plus yards thrown, and his first career win on the biggest stage, what came next should have been obvious. He should have walked into that locker room and been handed the game ball. Instead, he didn't even get a mention. The ball went to Myles Garrett, Cleveland's superstar defensive end. Now, let's be clear about one thing. Garrett had a terrific game. He notched 3 sacks. The defense racked up a total of 10. They completely shut down the Raiders' offense. No one is taking that away from him. He's a monster on the field, a franchise pillar. An all-pro veteran who's carried the Browns' defense on his back more times than we can count. He did his job and did it well. But this time, it wasn't his story. This win wasn't about a shutdown defense or a dominant pass rush. This was the redemption story the entire NFL couldn't stop watching, and it centered around one rookie. And when that magical moment of team-wide celebration came, when it was time to recognize something truly historic, it went to the wrong player. It's not about disrespecting Garrett, it's about understanding symbolism. Game balls aren't just a pat on the back, they're powerful. They tell everyone in the room and everyone watching from the outside who mattered most when it counted. And on the field, in that moment, there was no question. This game belonged to Shedeur, the rookie who had been told his name was just a headline. The kid some said shouldn't even be in the league. The quarterback who wasn't even given first-team reps 2 weeks prior. He stepped in, lifted a team smothered in pressure, made plays, stayed poised, and won. And yet, no game ball. That wasn't just a missed moment. It felt like a message. To outsiders, it might sound small. Just a ball. Just another post-game ritual. But to those inside the NFL world, the locker room culture, that symbolism means everything. Especially for a young quarterback trying to win over the room, trying to prove he belongs. Being ignored in that moment sends a wave throughout the locker room, across fans, and deep into media circles. And social media? They noticed immediately. Fans lit up Twitter, Instagram, TikTok blindsided, confused, and more than a little angry. Former NFL players chimed in. Analysts said what everyone else was thinking. How do you give the game ball to anyone but the guy who just made team history? The conversation shifted from celebration to controversy, from hope to frustration. Some even felt it was intentional, a subtle shot from the coaching staff, or perhaps a way to protect the status of another quarterback. Maybe they wanted to keep the spotlight shared, or maybe they just didn't get it. Whatever the reason, it backfired. Instead of riding a wave of goodwill, the Browns had suddenly stirred up an image problem. Headlines that should have been about Shadour's poise and potential turned into questions about why he wasn't being fully embraced. And the worst part? It didn't have to be this way. They could have honored both Garrett and Shedeur, one for dominance, the other for defying every odd in the book. They could have lifted them together and signaled to the team that both sides of the ball mattered. But they didn't, and the snub echoed far louder than anyone expected. Still, as the controversy grew louder, Shedeur remained calm, collected, even graceful in the way he carried himself afterward. But when he gave his post-game press conference and said this win came after only 1 week of practice, that's when people realized this snub might have meant much more than anyone originally thought. Because deeper than a game ball was a question some fans were afraid to ask, but now couldn't ignore. Why wasn't Shedeur given this opportunity sooner? On the surface, it sounded humble, almost innocent. This win is crazy. I only had 1 week of practice. But the more people listened to that quote, the more they realized what Shadour Sanders was actually saying. It wasn't just about being surprised by success or trying to stay grounded. This was his way of quietly calling out the coaching staff without ever raising his voice. Think about it. He steps onto the NFL stage for the first time, wins a game that no rookie quarterback in Cleveland had won in over 3 decades, makes plays all over the field, and immediately says, 1 week of practice. Not a full offseason, not a training camp running with the starters. Just 1 week. Let that sink in. This wasn't just an underdog winning out of nowhere, this was the system admitting it failed, whether it meant to or not. Because if he could play like that with limited snaps, rushed installation, and almost no time to gel with his receivers, why wasn't he playing sooner? Why did it take 17 straight losses to put him on the field? Why wasn't he getting first-team reps during camp? Why wasn't the offensive plan built around him in week 1? Shedeur didn't point fingers. He didn't slam the staff. He didn't complain. He just said the truth. 1 week. I did. And in that single sentence, he flipped the spotlight from his victory to their delay. Whether he intended it as a quiet warning or not, his words forced fans and analysts alike to stop and rethink everything. What might the Browns' season look like right now if this kid had been given a real chance earlier? Could they have turned things around sooner, beat teams they barely lost to, built confidence, chemistry, and rhythm around a quarterback who clearly has it? Because now, everyone's realizing what they missed. And that pressure? It's starting to fall heavy on head coach Kevin Stefanski. Stefanski isn't new to questions about quarterback decisions. He's rotated players before, made safe calls over bold ones. But this was different. Letting Shedeur ride the bench while the team collapsed, and only unleashing him when there were no other options, that doesn't look like patience. It looks like hesitation. Or worse, politics. There's been quiet speculation around Berea ever since the draft. Whispers that Barry believed in Shedeur more than the coaches did, that some in the building weren't sold. That veteran loyalty and preset depth charts took priority over momentum or upside. Now, none of that's confirmed. No one's come out and said it openly. But Shadour's performance and his subtle, strategic comment have added real fuel to those rumors. Because if this kid can look that good with 1 week of reps, What exactly were they waiting for? Even offensive players seemed caught off guard by how crisp and composed he was. Post-game, a few receivers hinted that it was just easy out there with him, like he already knew how to run the huddle. That's not normal for a rookie. And it only makes Stefanski and the coaching staff look worse for not activating him sooner. Whether it was ego, caution, or simple mismanagement, they held him back. And nobody seems able to explain why. Meanwhile, Andrew Berry, the same man who stuck his neck out in the draft room, who fought to get Shedeur in the door, now looks like the smartest guy in the building. And Stefanski? He looks like the guy who couldn't see the answer standing right in front of him. The pressure is mounting. The fans are asking questions. The media's turned up the heat. And inside the locker room, every player knows what 1 week really meant. It meant the Browns were late to their own rescue. And if Shedeur could revive this team with only 7 days to prepare, what else has this staff been getting wrong? The glow of victory didn't last long in Cleveland. Because while fans were still celebrating Shadour Sanders' historic debut, the man wearing the headset on the sideline was standing in the center of a growing storm. Kevin Stefanski may have walked out of that stadium with a win on his record, but outside the locker room, he walked into an avalanche of questions. And not the kind you can deflect with cliches at the podium. People wanted real answers. Why wasn't Shedeur starting sooner? Why wasn't he getting first-team reps in camp? Why was the offense clearly better with a quarterback you'd kept benched for months? And perhaps most importantly, what else are you getting wrong? Normally, coaches get praise after snapping a long losing streak, especially in Cleveland, where expectations are so often buried in disappointment. But this wasn't a normal win. This wasn't just another game. This was a revelation. A fifth-round rookie, dragged through every form of NFL skepticism, stepped into a crumbling situation and immediately did what your previous quarterbacks couldn't. He didn't just manage the game, he changed the entire energy of the team. And fans felt it instantly. The offense looked alive. The sideline had juice. The receivers looked re-energized. Shadour Sanders, with just 1 week of practice, pulled an entire franchise out of a 3-0-year-long shadow. So how, fans asked, did Kevin Stefanski not see this coming? The coaching decision suddenly looked less like caution and more like stubbornness. Analysts began digging into earlier games, noticing how static the offense had been, how predictable, how limited the quarterback play was, game after game, while Shedeur sat on the bench fully healthy, fully capable, and fully overlooked. Even more frustrating? Stefanski isn't new to this level of scrutiny. He's been on the hot seat before. He knows what bad optics look like, and yet, somehow, he walked right into one of the worst possible PR moments of his career. Because if holding Shedeur back wasn't enough, he also didn't give him the game ball. That decision alone lit up the sports world. Fans online were outraged. Reporters in press scrums had their follow-up questions locked and ready. Former players posted videos shaking their heads. Was this an oversight? A message? A power move? Nobody knows for sure. But what looked like a petty decision came across to the public as a massive misjudgment. Instead of embracing the moment, Stefanski came off as too late and too closed off. And whether he meant it that way or not doesn't even matter now. Perception became reality. Some fans are calling it jealousy. Others call it old-school coaching pride, where certain leaders hate being proven wrong by a player they didn't believe in. But the truth might be even simpler. Maybe Kevin Stefanski just didn't want to admit he made the wrong call. And now, no matter how he spins it, Shadour's success has exposed the problem. Because every throw that kid makes moving forward, every win he racks up, every new highlight clip that goes viral, it's just another receipt, another reminder of how long the Browns waited to start the clock on their future. And the collateral damage is mounting. Not just in media pressure, but inside the building. Sources suggest there have been quiet tensions between Stefanski and Andrew Berry for months. Nothing explosive, nothing officially reported. But the kind of cold distance that happens when a GM hands the coach a gift and the coach forgets to unwrap it. Berry put his job on the line drafting Shedeur. He absorbed all the heat from fans and analysts. He saw things few others did, and he stuck with it even when people told him to walk away. Now, he's a genius. Stefanski? He's wobbling. Because make no mistake, if this game had gone the other way, Stefanski probably wouldn't be the one leading the post-game locker room speech. He'd be staring down round-the-clock talk shows and brutal tweets calling for his job. Instead, Shedeur dragged his name out of the fire and didn't even get proper credit for it. And here's the kicker, this moment could have been Stefanski's redemption too. He could have owned it. He could have walked out and said, "I waited too long, that's on me. But this kid is special and he's our guy from here on out." But he didn't. He dodged. He stuck to the script. And that silence? It's been louder than anything he could have said. Now the Browns are teetering, not because of a quarterback problem, that part may finally be solved, but because the guy calling the plays might not be the guy who believed in the player running them. There's still time for Stefanski to win back the locker room, win back the fan base, maybe even reshape his legacy. But if he makes the same mistake again, if he benches Shedeur the second another quarterback is healthy, the backlash won't just be loud. It'll be nuclear. What happens after the final whistle can tell you more about a team than what happens during the game. And in the Browns locker room, after Shadour Sanders pulled off one of the most historic wins in franchise history, things got awkward. A rookie breaks a 3-decade drought, lifts a team out of a 17-game pit of failure, throws over 200 yards, shows maturity beyond his years, and the game ball goes to someone else. From the outside, maybe it doesn't seem like a big deal. The average fan might see a shiny souvenir being handed out and think it's just a gesture, a meaningless token. But inside a football locker room, the game ball carries weight. It's not just a pat on the back, it's a message, a loud one. It says, "This guy led us. This guy earned it. This guy is why we won." So when coaches handed it to Myles Garrett even after everything Shedeur had just done, people noticed. And not just fans, players did too. This isn't about disrespecting Garrett. No serious fan would deny his talent or impact. 3 sacks in one game, leader of a dominant defense, face of the franchise. He's earned game balls in plenty of games over the years. But this wasn't a plenty of games type of win. This one was different. This was transformational. This wasn't about defensive dominance. It was about a shift in the team's identity. A rookie quarterback, doubted by nearly everyone, stepped into chaos and brought order. That's what made this moment symbolic. And symbols matter, especially in sports, especially in a culture built on hierarchy, trust, and validation. Not giving that ball to Shedeur sent a message. Whether the coaching staff meant it that way or not, it broadcasted something loud and clear. You're still not the guy. It implied his success was temporary, that his historic win wasn't enough to earn full buy-in. And for a locker room that just watched a rookie save their season's narrative, it rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. Even if no one said it out loud, the silence spoke volumes. The body language, the glances, the energy in the room. This wasn't just about ego, it was about leadership. And the unsigned message players received was, leadership hasn't shifted yet. Now, think about the players who've been through QB carousel after QB carousel, who've played alongside guys who lacked composure, who cracked under pressure, who couldn't rally the offense. They saw the difference with Shedeur. They felt his control in the huddle. They fed off his calm. And in one game, he gave them something no rookie before had given them in 30 years: confidence. And somehow, that didn't earn him the symbolic recognition he deserved. Outside the locker room, things were boiling. Social media exploded with frustration. Browns fans, usually numb from years of false starts, were furious that this start wasn't being celebrated properly. Former NFL players chimed in on podcasts and interviews, saying they were blown away Shedeur wasn't honored. Some suggested it revealed deeper issues behind the scenes, that perhaps Stefanski wasn't sold on Shedeur and didn't want to crown him too soon. Now, are those claims verified? No. Are they possible? Definitely. Because all signs point in that direction. From the late start, to the limited practice reps, to the game ball snub, to the muted tone Stefanski used in the post-game presser when describing the win, there's been no full-throated endorsement of Shadour Sanders yet. Not from the coaching staff, not the way you'd expect after a quarterback just pulled off one of the biggest wins in your franchise's recent memory. Instead, it's been careful, strategic, hesitant. And that hesitation can split a locker room real fast. Meanwhile, Andrew Berry isn't hesitating. That viral field moment when he walked up to Shedeur, beaming with pride, voice shaking slightly with raw emotion, wasn't just about a football win. It was about vindication. And unlike the coaching staff, Berry hasn't been shy about where he stands. He believes in Shedeur. He risked his name on drafting him. He pushed to activate him, and when that win came, he made sure the world saw their connection. Coaches can talk about leadership all they want in press conferences, But when a guy plays like a leader and the room feels its symbols like the game ball become more than just tradition, they define how much a team trusts its future. And right now, that message feels clouded in Cleveland. Because while coaches debate who deserves credit, the fans, players, media, and millions online have already made up their minds. They watched the game. They felt the shift. They saw the moment. And they know what every Browns fan on earth felt that night. This win wasn't about defense. It was about direction. Sometimes it's not a highlight, not a stat line, not even a game-changing throw. Sometimes the moment that defines everything happens after the lights fade in a quiet tunnel with no cameras supposed to be rolling. But this time, they were. Right after Shadour Sanders walked off the field, still soaked in sweat and adrenaline from his historic first NFL win, he found Dion. Primetime, the Hall of Famer, the media icon, the magnetic force behind Shadour's rise was waiting for his son at the mouth of the tunnel like a lion, waiting for his cub to come home from battle. And when they locked eyes, the whole world felt it. You didn't have to be a fan of the Browns. You didn't even have to like football. The second Shedeur collapsed into his father's arms, smiling through exhaustion, emotion pouring off his face, it became the most shared clip of the night. There were no words that needed to be said, because that hug said everything. This wasn't just one of the greatest athletes of all time embracing his son. It was a father watching years of criticism get shattered by one game. It was a dad watching his son become his own man. Dion had prepared Shedeur for this not just physically, but mentally. From high school to Jackson State to Colorado, Dion watched the labels pile up. He's just getting attention because of his dad. He wouldn't survive in Division I. He wouldn't survive the SEC. He wouldn't survive the NFL. And at each level, Shedeur didn't just survive, he thrived. But the hardest part? He didn't just have to prove people wrong. He had to do it without ever punching back. There's a toll in being the child of greatness, the constant comparisons, the heavy shadow, and Shedeur didn't make excuses or duck expectations. He just kept showing up sharper, smarter, and more composed every time. That moment in the tunnel? It wasn't relief, it was proof. This wasn't primetime son anymore, it was Shadour Sanders, NFL quarterback. But, like with everything in his career, the credit didn't come without hesitation. Not even a minute after the clip went viral, trending across platforms, people were already dissecting it. Is this too much drama? Shouldn't he be celebrating with the team? This is still prime spotlight. But that's the thing people get wrong, over and over again. Shedeur's not writing Dion's name, he's honoring it and building something separate right in front of us. And he's doing it under insane pressure. Just think about how rare it is for a young quarterback in his first start to be this composed, this polished, this emotionally centered. Now, add the fact that every move he makes gets filtered through the lens of, oh, that's Prime's kid. It's a razor-thin balancing act between honoring your father's legacy and building your own. And Shedeur just walked that line flawlessly. His post-game comments showed it too. When asked about the praise, he didn't spike the ball. He didn't boast. He said, "It's only been a week of practice. Imagine what we could do with a real offseason." No hint of arrogance, but huge awareness in the subtext. He knows he could be the guy, the real face of this team, if Cleveland finally gives him the tools, reps, and respect he's earned. And then, in the locker room, someone called him Junior. Not maliciously, not insultingly either. But you could see what it meant. Another subtle reminder he's living in a shadow every time he walks through the building. That single word, junior, represents everything he's been fighting against. And yet, you don't see him lash out. You don't see him snap back online or throw shade at teammates or staff, especially not when he easily could. Instead, what he does is simple, quiet, and powerful. He delivers. 1 week of practice. One win, one legacy that just started writing its own chapter. And now, just like that, the question changes. It's no longer, is Shedeur ready? It's, is Cleveland ready to let him lead? Because if they're still doubting him after that performance, after that poise, after that pressure, what they're really doubting isn't his ability, it's their own ability to recognize they've already found what they've been searching 30 years to get. Now, the question isn't what just happened. The question is, what happens next? Because if the Cleveland Browns have shown us anything over the last few decades, it's that they're not just capable of finding hope, they're also capable of letting it slip away. One historic performance by Shadour Sanders might have cracked open the door to something special, but it won't matter if they don't walk through it. The Browns are now standing at a crossroads, and how they handle the next few weeks might determine the next few years of the franchise. So do they stick with Shedeur as the starter? Do they finally build this offense around him? Or do they fall back into the same old pattern, playing it safe, protecting veteran depth charts, and holding on to the past? You can already feel the pressure building around that decision. The fans have made up their minds. Social media is rallying behind Shedeur harder than any Browns rookie quarterback in recent memory. National analysts are openly saying he looked like the most poised player on the field, and somehow, it still wasn't enough to convince the coaching staff post-game. Kevin Stefanski has been non-committal with his comments ever since. He praises Shedeur in public, but carefully avoids giving him the official title of QB1. And that is exactly what's confusing people the most. Because in a league that lives and dies off momentum, Shedeur's debut wasn't just impressive, it was undeniable. For a team with such a toxic quarterback history, this moment should have felt like the clouds had finally parted. The kind of breakthrough that puts hope right back onto the field in a jersey. Think about what's at stake here. If the Browns commit to Shedeur, they get to start fresh. Build fully around a QB who's already shown he can lead under stress, didn't let the pressure get to him, and most importantly, won. You give him the remaining starts, a full offseason, dial the scheme around his strengths, and let him work on timing with his receivers. He's already commanding respect. Now, you give him the full foundation to build a franchise. But if they don't? If they bench him again, send him back into the background, or wait until the timing is better? It'll haunt this team, because Shadur's now shown the world what he can do with almost no prep. Just 7 days of practice, no preseason starter reps, no rhythm with the first team unit. And he delivered anyway. He said it himself. This win came after just a week of preparation. Imagine what a full offseason would do. That wasn't cocky. That was a statement to everyone in the building. A layered message to the staff saying, even at 50%, I'm outperforming guys you've handed the job to. If they ignore that, if they bury the spark again, and if Shedeur ends up thriving on another team someday like so many other misused Browns players, it won't just be painful, it'll be legacy damaging. Because now you're no longer guessing. You've seen it. The sample size might be small, but the proof is right there. And so is the risk of losing something special again. To make matters even more complicated, the dynamic between Stefanski and Andrew Berry is beginning to fracture publicly. Berry, after all, looks like the clear winner here. He drafted Shedeur late, stuck his neck on the line when no one else wanted to touch him, and now sits with the receipts in hand. The viral clip of his post-game moment with Shedeur, the look in his eyes when he said, "How's it feel, bro?" That wasn't some PR stunt. That was relief. That was validation. That was the GM telling the football world, "I told you so." Contrast that with Stefanski, tight-lipped in press conferences, downplaying the performance, avoiding full acknowledgement. Whether it's ego, caution, or something else behind the scenes, the optics don't lie. And they're not just bad, they're costly. Because fair or not, the world has already drawn a line. Berry equals vision. Stefanski equals resistance. So what do you think the fans are going to choose if that rift gets worse? More importantly, what do you think the locker room will do? Because players notice leadership. They notice who gets trusted, who gets ignored, and whether winning really matters in personnel decisions. If Shedeur's name disappears from the starting lineup after this, don't be surprised if frustration bubbles up in that room. Quietly at first, then not so quietly. But here's what makes this whole thing truly special underneath the frustration, the controversy, and the chaos. There's hope. Real, actual hope. Something Browns fans have been chasing for over 30 years. And it didn't come in the form of a blockbuster trade or a Heisman winner. It came from a quiet, humble kid from Jackson State who asked for nothing, made no headlines, threw no tantrums, and simply took his shot. And connected. Now the pressure is no longer on Shadour Sanders to prove himself. He did that. Now, the pressure is on the Cleveland Browns to not screw this up. So here we are. Shadour Sanders walked into his first NFL start, carrying the weight of his name, the silence of his playbook, and the pressure of an entire city begging for something to believe in. And he delivered. He cracked a curse 30 years deep. He raised the pulse of the locker room. He made fans lean forward for the first time in years, instead of staring blankly at another disappointing Sunday. And while the fireworks were still going off for everyone watching, someone decided he didn't deserve the game ball. That's where this becomes something bigger than football. Because what people reacted to wasn't just stats or completions or touchdowns, it was truth. It was symbolism. It was the emotion in Andrew Barry's voice. The tunnel hug from Dion. The humility layered into Shedeur's voice when he said, "1 week of practice." He wasn't asking for sympathy. He was showing you what he could become if someone would just give him the keys and stop acting like the engine might break. And now, every decision Cleveland makes from this point forward is going to say a lot more about them than it says about Shedeur. No more speculation about whether he's ready. No more wondering if he can handle the spotlight. No more hiding him in the shadows of the depth chart. The world saw it, and you can't unsee it. So what do you think? Did the Browns miss their moment to fully crown the future? Was it a simple coaching oversight? Or something more calculated? Should Shedeur be the permanent starter effective immediately? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We actually read what you write, and we're building a real community here of fans who want to follow not just the box scores, but the stories behind them. And if you made it this far into the video, respect. You care. You see what's happening. You're part of this. So if you want to ride with us on Shedeur's journey, and you want honest breakdowns, emotional moments, and the real behind the scenes of the Browns' future, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter. Drop a like if you believe Shedeur's win mattered, even if the game ball didn't land in his hands. Share this with a Browns fan who's been through it all, the QBs, the chaos, the heartbreak, because they'll understand why this feels different. History just got made. Now the only question is, will Cleveland recognize it before it slips away?